Welcome to the Exhibit A podcast.
3, 2, 1, we are on. Well, welcome to Exhibit A, and we have Ria Severance here with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
So our topic today is co-parenting and reunification therapy, and we brought Ria in because she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. You've been practicing your profession for at least 30 years. Is that correct? You're in the South Pasadena area over on Huntington Drive, and this is the first time that we've had a mental health professional on our show, and it's going to be really cool for the people listening. Most of our cases involve children, and not surprisingly, there's a lot of conflict that come with children, and there just seems to be this curtain, that we would like to peek under to see, how the professionals view these cases and how they deal with them. And, you and I have worked together on a couple of cases, and I thought it'd be great for you to come in. So thank you in advance, by the way, for being here.
It's a privilege and fun. It's fun.
So, Ria, I'd just like to let our viewers know more about you. You've got a fascinating background. First of all, your father was an attorney.
He was.
Okay, and I think that, in talking to you, there's this comfort level and understanding. A lot of people freeze up when they're talking to attorneys, and, you seem to be, in your own skin when we talk, and stuff, and that's really cool. And I think it probably helps you in dealing with divorce cases because of the fact that, you come from a background where your father was an attorney and you're not intimidated or overly impressed by attorneys.
Oh.
So I'm looking at your website, and it says, regardless of your clinical focus, Ria is a validating context for growth. She empowers clients to build on their strengths and creativity and facilitates leaving them inspired by who they are, as well as effective in their relationships and in the world. And this is the sentence that really caught my eye. Clients learn to generate and live into their vision of a life truly worth living, regardless of the circumstances. That's the most powerful biography statement I've ever seen. And, I just want you to dwell a little bit on that last sentence. What does that mean to you?
Well, in this particular context, people going through a divorce, especially if it's litigated, are never at their best. And their lives are coming undone as they knew them. They may have to, sell their homes and relocate, which in and of itself is a major stressor. Their standards of living are dropping. What used to supply one household is now going to supply two households. Their kids may be needing to change schools. So the circumstances are really tough. And it's counterintuitive when the ship is sinking to not freak out, and which everybody does. It's like everybody. So when the ship is sinking, it's really counterintuitive to suddenly learn to swim. And ironically or paradoxically, it's a prime moment to learn to swim and to develop the skills needed to create that life from the ground up in ways that you may never have. And for alcoholics or addicts, they always say you have to hit bottom before you move forward, which is why addicts in recovery are such a joy to work with, because they've hit bottom and they're ready for something. People going through, especially a litigated divorce or a high conflict divorce, are at rock bottom. So they're in a place to catapult themselves with support. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do by yourself. I would say it's really hard, if not impossible, to do by yourself. So I guess that's what I mean by that. And creating a really viable, like dreaming into and being clear about what you want for yourself and starting to move in that direction while the ship is sinking somewhere else is possible. It's doable.
I know you're right on, because in my own situation, which I normally don't talk about, but I did find it to be an enormous growth process long after the fact. When I look back, I thought, wow, I wouldn't have taken up dance lessons.
Right.
I wouldn't have started this practice. I wouldn't have been in the profession that I'm currently in. And I try to tell my clients that if you look at it, and it's hard to tell people when they're suffering with their emotional pain and everything, that this could be, a time of enormous growth.
I don't shove that down their throats.
No. Well, you're the expert.
But yeah, it is. It has a tremendous potential to catapult people into their best selves, and most people are at their worst selves in the middle of, especially a litigated divorce or a high conflict divorce.
Okay.
There's so much fear.
Right. So I just wanted to let our viewers know your stellar credentials. You graduated from UCLA. You had a psychology degree, summa cum laude. You're a brainiac. And then you went on to get a advanced degree, and you have been practicing, I think, since 1986. Is that when you started?
Whatever it says there, I'm not good with dates. I think it was 86, and I think I was licensed. I mean, they sent me the license, I think, in 87, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And the other thing that you've done in your profession, which I think is very unique, is that you've been very involved in what we call collaborative divorce. It's a process that's different than your typical divorce. Can you describe what collaborative divorce is and how it works?
Sure. If I'm part of a group called Pasadena Collaborative Divorce. We're all independent practitioners who have been collaboratively trained and have at least 40 hours of mediation training. And I'm still trying to rope you into getting on there. And we put on a monthly free, which is unusual. Usually the people charge, but ours is free at the Pasadena Public Library once a month. Divorce options workshop that helps families, especially couples, identify the divorce process that's most in line with their values and their budgets. So a collaborative divorce is one of those options. And if you and I are married and we're getting a divorce, in a collaborative process, you and I would each have family law attorneys that were collaboratively trained. We'd each have mental health professionals like me who are collaboratively trained. We'd have one neutral forensic CPA or financial specialist. Right now, all of them are CPAs that are forensically trained, and that saves the couple a lot of money. And we have one neutral child or adult child specialist. And it sounds like there are a lot of professionals, but by the time you're through with a litigation, you're going to have that many people or more involved, only these people are all working together. There's no confidentiality amongst the professionals. So our job is to make sure that all family members are considered and to get the family to the finish line as effectively with consideration for everyone's well-being and efficiently and cost-effectively as possible. And I could go on for an hour on just the adult child specialist and why we've rallied for that option.
Cool. So the whole purpose then is to get it away from the traditional litigated divorce and to be in a more cooperative environment.
Yeah, and if the stake, if you will, that we have them, the thing they sign at the beginning, the agreement they sign, says that if it falls out of collaborative, all of us are off the case, and they can't use any of us to go forward.
Okay.
So there's motivation to ensure that they get to the finish line. Although some people, especially if they're consulting with over litigators, who are saying things like, "Oh, we could do better for you in court," they don't say how much that will cost, but they can sway one person. And a lot of times you're dealing with personality disorders. And those people can be contained in a collaborative process with two coaches, I think. But it takes a really strong team to hold that together. So Okay,
cool. You're right. You're trying to rope me into it, and attorneys have to go through some specialized training for that, and you've told me about that. There's the Los Angeles County Bar Association puts on some training, and so
No. I'm on the board of the Los Angeles Collaborative Family Law Association.
Okay, I got the wrong agency.
And they put on that training
Okay.
for attorneys and mental health and financial specialists. But we've also gotten more realtors interested and financial advisors and other professionals so that they're more hip to the process that's occurring and can come in as consultants and still be mindful of the process that's occurring.
Okay, cool. Well, let's change the topic a little bit. I want to talk to you about co-parenting. And the first question I have of you is how do children suffer when their parents do not co-parent? What are some of the things that you see as a professional that probably break your heart?
The more conflict kids are exposed to, the less well they do in the aftermath of a divorce. That's just how it is. And since something like 97% of our communication is nonverbal, I mean, you have to be really good to be able to keep that amount of conflict from your kids. And parents are suffering. And it's really hard to be a maximally effective parent or even an employee when you're going through a divorce. So I would say with kids, they feel torn. Often they're placed in the middle. Parents share too much information. Parents badmouth each other. The kid's DNA belongs to both of them. And if mom badmouths dad or dad badmouths mom, in those instances, at some fundamental level, the kid knows they're badmouthing them for every way that they're like dad or like mom. And so that you can tell a kid, oh, we love you no matter what, we're going to be here for you. But if you could ditch mom or dad and you have all these nasty things to say about them and you loved them before, I think it's, it doesn't take a genius to figure out how you could be at risk.
There's a video over, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's over at the courthouse. They make parents see it before they go to the mandatory mediation. Me and a couple of other attorneys saw it for the first time. We were floored because it was the kids speaking about their experience.
Yeah.
And it just breaks your heart. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have.
Oh my God.
It's hard. It is heartbreaking. And parents have no idea how much it impacts them.
Yeah, you hear some of them say, well, kids are resilient, right? And it's like they might be resilient, but inside there's some hurt that isn't being recognized.
And sometimes, ineffective parenting was happening before. Now it's worse.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Now it's worse. And I mean, we need a license to drive a car, but there's no manual for raising kids. So getting clear about how to really empower kids becomes all the more important.
So, Ria, let me ask you this. This was on my mind before we started the show, is that there are people, when they're going through the divorce, they're like the worst parents in the world because they're just thinking about themselves a lot of times. Do you see cases where there are people that were decent parents during the time that everybody was
all
married,
the time,
and then they become?
I mean, tell me, weren't you a lousier parent during your divorce?
I don't know.
I know I was.
I know I made mistakes. I made huge mistakes.
I know I
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
know that I was not as emotionally present. I was anxious. I was depressed. How can you not be? Your life is coming undone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was not as available for support and mindful impact. And I'm a really good parent.
I know you are because we talked about your daughters, right? And what you did as actually you're one of the authoritative types of parents, and your kids did really well. Yeah, we'll talk about that on another program about how the different types of parenting. But I want to go back to the co-parenting therapy that you provide. What methods of co-parenting therapy do you think works best?
Often it's court ordered, right? The judges see that these people are going at it in a way that's not going to be conducive. And sometimes my colleague and I, Marianne Aronson, who practices in the same building in South Pass, we'll no longer do high conflict co-parenting cases alone. Because if I'm a single therapist and I have two co-parents there and they're in the middle of a conflict litigated custody dispute in court, they're terrified, number one. They're terrified that I will rat them out. And they waste a lot of time trying to get me on their side. So I don't get anywhere. When it's high conflict, Marianne and I each take one person. Usually I don't know why, but I tend to be really good with super aggressive people. It's not something I love to do, but I'm not as phased as most people. So I tend to take the most aggressive person. And with two of us in the room, it's more expensive. But I think it's the only thing that works because I can, block and redirect and build skills in a way that isn't shaming. And she's doing the same on her end. And we're also validating the other client. We're not just for our client, although we have more leeway with that person. But we also affirm and validate and redirect the other person's client. And so you're not in a position where everything you do, the clients are saying, well, you were nicer to her than you were to me, or any of that. It really gets much more focused on, look, you guys are creating a context, whether you're married or not, in which your children will or won't develop. And your inability to communicate, you don't get out of that. You don't get out of that if you want things to be decent for your kids.
So do you find yourself advocating for one? Do you guys end up being advocates at all, like unintentionally during the process? It seems like it would be a natural thing for you to start going, yeah, but he's saying this, you're not listening to her. And if you don't do that, how do you keep from being an advocate?
I think being collaboratively trained and trained in mediation and also clinically trained,
okay.
Marianne and I will go off about stuff and go on about stuff, right? Like she'll say, well, but she da-da-da-da-da, and I'll say, yeah, but he da-da-da-da-da. And we come to a place where we go like, okay, we always know we don't have the whole picture. And so a focus on skills, a focus on training up skills and effective communication and what's going to work for the kids is the beacon that keeps us on track.
Okay. So when court orders parents to participate in co-parenting therapy and they want to go to Ria Severance, the judge wants you're going to come back and say, I want to do it with two therapists.
I'm not doing this by myself.
Okay.
I will say I am not doing this by myself because I'm not going to be effective.
Yeah.
I'll collect my check and I won't do anything.
Yeah. I do find that a lot of my clients come to me and they feel like there's an attempt by the other side to get the favored position within the therapy room, and I do see that. So it absolutely makes sense. And even though it might be a little more expensive, what we're looking at is we want results. Speaking of results, we want to improve the situation. Are there times where it just ain't going to help? I mean,
Yeah. The part that isn't, I find that we've been pretty effective with co-parents, and I actually do think that Al Gibbs has a good class, and Marianne does a co-parenting class for two people privately. I think those classes help prime and prepare people. They aren't going to necessarily build the skills, but they're going to prime people. Where we're tragically failing is, as a profession, I think, is in reunification work. I don't think there's not sufficient training, there's not sufficient experience, there's not sufficient a lot of things.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think some of our viewers might be hearing this for the first time, a thing that's called reunification or reunification therapy. Can you describe what that is and why we need it in some cases?
Yeah.
I mean, it involves a lot of times parental alienation or somebody that you're trying.
Sometimes a person is just estranged. It could be a parent. I have a parent right now where there's no evil intent, but there's an over-involvement, right? And in that over-involvement, there's an alignment. You know, you see that even in intact families. There's an over-alignment or an over-involvement by one parent with the kids, where they're not particularly even remotely aware that they could be using the kids emotionally. And that creates a kind of estrangement. But it can also, if it's fed and it's nefarious and dark, it can also create alienation where you get a kid who's almost phobic about being with the estranged or alienated parent and won't speak to that parent and sees that parent as really bad. And it's very judgmental. It's been likened a lot to sort of rearing a kid in a Ku Klux Klan thing and then trying to expect that kid to be in relationship with an African American or Latino parent. It 24/7, all days a week, except for one lousy hour a week. You know, they have family and usually extended family who endorse that kind of blanket rejection of the other parent and the other parent's family. And when that happens, it's heartbreaking because the kid is being robbed of maybe not a perfect parent, but a parent who's good enough and willing to love and invest. And regular reunification therapy has failed miserably in that regard. We have some new protocols for that, but I wouldn't say that it's successful across the board. And I can explain some of that process to you in a second. But the other thing is programs like Family Bridges, which work, but it's difficult to get the court orders. There is actually
What is that?
Family Bridges.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Randy Rand up north, and it's like practically unbrainwashing, if you will, the kid in the context, and they have to be a certain age, I think 10 or something like that, but this happens so early sometimes. So anybody younger than 10 can't do it. And what that program requires is that there's a no contact order, and I don't remember the time. I'm dying to do the training, by the way, with them. There's a no contact order so that the favored parent can't have any contact with the child for 30 days. And the favored parent has to go through a specific training in order to be able to reconnect with a child. And that means text or anything. If the child texts that person, it starts back at day one.
Okay.
And judges are scared to do that.
Well, if I understand it correctly, isn't this involves going to like a camp or something, right? Or going up north? Or am I wrong?
It's like a couple of weekends, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
It's not even that long, but it's a training for the kid and a training for the parent.
Right.
But it's like, I think they have 3 days in a hotel with dad and 2 therapists and the kid. And there's some films, some education films, and then there's and everybody I know that has been a part of that team. There's a woman called Julie Berner. She has done that work, and she has watched kids who in court cussed out a judge and stuff like that completely turn around.
Wow.
So I think it works. The problem is, are you going to get the court orders, and do you have $20,000 to $40,000 sitting around to do that?
Comes down to money, I think, right?
If you've done that, if you've already spent at least that much on a child custody evaluation,
Right.
and you're in debt up to the wazoo in terms of attorney's fees. I mean, it does come down to money, which is what really gets me. I mean, we need some sort of system that's more equitable in that way.
Yeah. With your individual therapy for reunification therapy? I know sometimes you recommend that there be non-therapy contact between the parent that's being alienated and the child. Why do you think that is important for the process?
That's not exactly it. I won't do reunification by myself anymore.
Okay.
I just don't think it works.
Okay.
If you do reunification by yourself, let's say it's dad, it's usually dad that's alienated, right? So I'm in the room with kid and I'm in the room with dad. Kid hates me from the get-go because I'm clear, I don't want a relationship with dad.
Yeah.
So what am I here for?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll do my time, right? And they may do that either directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
And dad sits there like, how long can you ward off accusations and bad-mouthing that are rigidly entrenched? It goes nowhere.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
So what I prefer to do is Marianne and I do co-parenting work with the favored and the targeted parent. Like, too bad you guys are talking, right?
Is the child in the room?
No.
Okay.
We work with a woman who's great with kids and also high conflict divorce. Her name is Carrie Edwards Chung. And she is in San Marino as well as in West Covina. And we have the child immediately placed in therapy with her. Marianne and I are communicating with each other and with her. Let's say Marianne works with the favored parent and I work with the targeted parent. It doesn't matter. And what we need to do is ensure that the favored parent can endorse a relationship with the targeted parent. Because if we don't get that endorsement from the favored parent and we don't take that on, there's nothing that's going to happen when Carrie comes in the room with the child. And if I have the targeted parent, I would be with that parent, all right? And we don't start work until the kid is prepared, until the favored parent's prepared, until dad, the targeted parent is prepared.
Wow. One last question before we move on to some other topics, but I guess you might not be able to answer this, but what causes people during that divorce process to, villainize the other side to the point where, it's like there's no... demonize the other person. What causes that psychologically? Because it's such a strong pattern that you see it in so many different cases. There must be... you must have a theory out there, about why this is happening. Or is this one of these things where there's no answer?
I would say usually with extreme black and white thinking, there is some kind of personality disorder going on. And when you have personality disorders, the whole divorce process, regardless of the process you use to divorce, is going to be more expensive.
Okay.
Because you're going to be more of a black and white thinker. You're going to be more adversarial. You won't clearly see the benefit of being reasonable or civil or respectful. There's a false sense of power that comes with bad-mouthing. And the long-term consequences to you, even as the bad-mouther, aren't clear or tangible, and they don't outweigh the immediate feel-good of downloading crap on someone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's primitive, and everybody's more primitive in a divorce.
Okay.
Regardless of the process.
Okay. Well, let's try to lighten up the mood here. What I want to do is, we talked about all the bad things that happen with co-parenting. I have an article, and I talked to you briefly before the show about this very interesting case where this selfless woman gives her ex-husband her kidney 5 years after the divorce. And the full article talks about how these people got married. They had a loving relationship. He became ill. And I think the strains of him being in the hospital and things just kind of hurt the marriage. But, she was selfless. Like this, of course, this photograph here almost looks like it's looks like she's posing for a... But anyways, do you find that there are success stories out there?
Absolutely. We're talking mostly about high conflict cases. Those are the ones that we've been talking about. But with a collaborative divorce, our goal is to really have people dance at their kids' weddings going forward.
Yeah.
right? And to really have that kind of vision in mind for what's possible. And when the professionals are collaboratively trained, you can much more easily do like an integrated, what we call an integrated mediation, which is less expensive, where maybe you have one coach and you have one financial and you have one attorney mediator. And the attorney mediators that are trained in collaborative also are good at playing in the sandbox with other people. So they're quick to know, and they've had experience, how to bring different professionals in that are going to play nice and help the couple get to the finish line. Loyola Law School's Center for Conflict Resolution, they host the collaborative trainings, but that center does mediations at very low cost, as well as collaborative divorces for families of modest means.
Okay, cool. And my last topic today is, and this is an article, I don't think you've seen it, but it's "This Man is Just Divorced and Wants Everyone to Know." And in the photograph, which I'm sure we'll see on the screen, shows he's driving around in a car that says "Just Divorced." How does that fit into your co-parenting theory? I mean, the kids see that.
Well, it could be a million different things.
Yeah.
It could be a million different things. The guy could just be happy it's over, right? I mean, the guy could just be super happy it's over. I hope his kids don't see this window.
Right.
I hope he has a really good time. I mean, I've heard of people like putting a coffin in their backyard and throwing a big party with marriage on the coffin to represent that period of their lives is over, and to celebrate the transition. Now, it's funny, and like I say, go for it, but I wouldn't want my kids seeing that, because they're still in the throes of it, and they're still feeling that tension if you guys haven't resolved that piece.
Yeah. Ria, let me tell you about some observations that I've made, and I'm maybe a little hesitant to do this because you're such a professional that you're gonna shoot me down here. But,
I doubt it.
well, one of the things that I notice is that if people come to a result quickly, there's a resolution, we get the marital settlement agreement all signed, and right at the end, we'd be sitting in this room, people are signing it, and all of a sudden the fighting starts. It's like something surfaces, the feelings surface, and they've got to have that last argument, and the emotions really fly. Or I see sometimes where you get a settlement, and there's been no bickering at all in the divorce, and then I get a call 6 months down the line, and now the war is on because they're fighting over a post-judgment thing, and it's just like we were going through a crazy divorce. It just seems like sometimes people need their pound of flesh or their day in court, or they just didn't get it out of their system yet, and it's not until they get dragged through the process and they get beat up where they go, okay, I've had enough now, and now I could, move on with my life. That's why I see this guy with the "Just Divorce" sign on there. It's like people need to get it out somehow.
I think that they may need to get it out. They need to get it out with their therapist, not the other person, because whether they realize it or not, they're going to be navigating that other person for the rest of their lives, as long as their children are alive. They're going to be at graduations, at football games, at baby showers. I mean, I think realizing that your kids need to be focused on those developmental hurdles are going to be, rather than on feeling how, dad is upset because mom's at this table, and mom is upset because dad is at, who needs that, right? And it continues if they don't resolve that. Now, to get back to your point, I think it's something, again, to take to your therapist and to sort out, because you have big feelings about it, and you have a lot of stuff going on that you haven't sorted out. If you start acting that out, you're going to pay through the nose in litigation fees.
Yeah.
And so getting clear about what it is, because there's no pound of flesh in court.
That's right.
It's not like Judge Judy.
It becomes your pound of flesh.
It's your pound of flesh. Right. It's your house. I mean, one of our clients, it was $2 million in an estate that went down the toilet because not you, the other attorney was over litigating. Right? The whole family assets, these people are not young either.
Right.
Went down because one attorney told the other party that they could do better, that they were going to get theirs.
Right.
And that is just not true. Beware of any attorney that says you're going to get yours.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Right? I know you do. That's why I'm saying it.
Yeah.
So I think it's problematic that they haven't processed the feelings about it, and that attorneys would do well to say, go process this. Your feelings are valid, but not in this context.
Yeah.
Let me do my job, you do yours, right? And in terms of happy endings, we do in mediation and collaborative have like ceremonies. I mean, sometimes we've had champagne and letters of honoring one another.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Well, Ria, I think we're out of time. Would you come back? I mean, this has been really, really interesting.
It's super fun. Yeah.
and I really think that you and I could talk for hours and hopefully make it interesting for our viewers. So thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Exhibit A, and we'll see you next time.
Exhibit A is produced by David Lindley at the law offices of Donald P. Schweitzer in Pasadena, California. For more information, visit us online at PasadenaLawOffice.com and all social media platforms.